given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, quick question. Do you feel administration has your back? And if not, how do we encourage them to have our back? And I'm using the word encourage because I want to be polite. And we'll cover some perspectives in how we see admin and if we feel that they're doing enough. My guest today is going to be Connie Alleyne. She's going to be sharing in with the dialogue. But before we introduce Connie and begin this great topic, I first would like to announce our three sponsors. One is American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to go back to school, getting that degree, please check out American Military University. It's a great online school, and they do support what we do in corrections. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And we also have a new sponsor. It's called The Wrap. Now, guys, if you're not familiar with The Wrap, I do have a video link in the description of this video. I definitely believe you guys should check out the link. But real quick, controlling combative subjects quickly and in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington DOC, LA County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the WRAP restraint. That's the WRAP, W-R-A-P. Go to Safe Restraints with an S, saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the WRAP, W-R-A-P. Give WRAP a call today at 1-800-WRAP-911. Connie, what's going on, Connie? How you been?
Oh, man, I've been good. You know, it's been a busy time for the Academy with, you know, folks signing up and getting their staff trained, which honestly, I think that's the biggest reward for me, just knowing that, you know, civilian employees are getting access to training that they might not have normally gotten access to. So Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall, which a new season is coming, and Anthony Gangi will be on it. Thank you very much.
Promises.
Author. Oh, get out of here. And the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. So clearly my plate is full and I'm trying to make sure I make room for everything. And so this has been a good time to make that happen. I'm excited and I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, guys, I also want to push two other things. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That's available. We are doing bulk purchases as well. We've been doing very well with bulk purchases. So if your agency is looking into buying a book, please, before you go to Amazon, reach out to me at gangianthony@yahoo.com. because I could discount the books and it will be a little bit cheaper as opposed to you going to Amazon. Also, virtual training. If you guys are interested, please email us, gangianthony@yahoo.com, or you can even email Connie. Connie, what's your email?
ConstantineAllyne@gmail.com.
Yeah, and then we'll tell you how we go about and do that. And that, it could be great. It could be virtual training for an agency or even just one-on-one mentoring. You could pick who you want from the panel. We can organize it and just get that dialogue. And I think it's great to have resources like that can help you enter this profession or even while you're in this profession. So I did get a message the other day.
So hold on. I don't want us to skip the fact that we are doing this while he's on vacation. Do you guys see the beautiful scenery in the back? The flag is flying. The beach is out there. This is how dedicated he is. And I want you guys to know that you know, he's been putting out content because he cares about what you guys have access to. He cares about the fact that we have a presence and we want you guys to always know that we are available to you. So, Anthony, I want to say kudos for you continuing to make sure we do these podcasts during a time when you're even on vacation.
Thank you. And the family gave me permission to do it as long as I have Connie on it. So, I mean, little maneuvering there, but it works. But the reason why I wanted to do this episode, and by the way, Connie actually obviously is busy as well today. We're kind of going on a little bit of an earlier schedule, is because there was a message that came my way about admin. Do you feel that admin have your back? And what I want to try to do during this dialogue is I don't want to just teach you guys what you need to do to document your concern. I also want to make sure that we don't have generalized animosity in regards to a department or a certain position. I think that becomes very divisive. So right off the bat, I know some people may say, I don't feel administration has my back. And when they say it, I mean, is it really the administrative department that we're holding responsible? Or is it really someone in particular that's just casting a bad shadow on that administrative level? And the reason why I want to say that, guys, is because there are good people that work in management. I've seen it. I've worked next to them. And we don't want to disenfranchise them by grouping them with those that we don't feel make the effort. Because that's I want people to realize something. When it comes to having someone's back, it's really about the effort and not so much the outcome. Because sometimes even administration doesn't have control of the outcome. And I don't want people to, because I didn't get what I want, negate the effort. But the sad thing is, if we start generalizing animosity towards the administration or that one person in administration that does make the effort, and again, we minimize the effort because we're so concerned about the outcome, then we start disenfranchising the one person that has been given us a voice. So I just want to make sure, just in general, that when we have a concern, we don't generalize it out to a whole department, because I think that becomes divisive, and it also doesn't showcase accountability for that individual who is an issue. So again, I mean, Connie, I'm sure you've been caught up in the generalized animosity of being an admin and everybody hating admin, when in reality it may be just that one person that casts a negative light on that position, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's just, there's always one in a bunch, right? And I mean, I don't want us to be that general, but you got those people, those leaders who are going to go above and beyond, right? Those leaders who understand what the experience is of being on the front line, and who literally can put themselves in those shoes and will make every effort. They will exhaust every effort to support their team. And then you have those who may come in and they have their own agendas, and they may not be as connected to the front line. And so when issues are brought to the forefront, it may not get the immediate attention or the priority that, we would like for it to get. But our reality is that there's ways for us to provide enough information and encouragement even to those who aren't as connected, so that ultimately we get the support that we need.
Right. And I think that's the key. I think that what we need to do, guys, is really start holding people accountable so we don't exhaust efforts in chasing after a whole department, when in reality, maybe there are people that are trying to make the effort. And what we wind up doing with those is that we wind up disenfranchising them. And I don't want to do that, because the key here, guys, is really about the effort. Now, one of the main concerns I want to address here, and that seems to be a national concern, is understaffing. I know in Georgia, they increased the incentive. I think it was Doherty County, I think it was. So they were having officers that were leaving, almost one officer a day. And then just by doing a pay increase, they started to see people not leaving. That's one thing. And second thing is people that were considering to leave to stay, and people now are trying to come back. So again, just that little incentive of, let's show these people what they're worth and finally give that greater pay. But I want people to realize something, that there are certain things that are in our control, and there are certain things that aren't in our control. And the concern I get is when you hold people responsible for things that aren't in their control, and they may not be in a position to tell you it isn't in their control. They just may have to hey, you got to trust me enough to know that even though we didn't get the outcome you wanted, I am making the effort. I am trying. So again, the part of the dialogue right here is to get people to appreciate the effort. because you're not always going to be able to get to that person who's responsible, because there are going to be people in higher positions that we know they're making the effort, but they're also not one to kind of push responsibility up. They'll make the effort, they'll do what they can, but they're not going to sit there and say, well, the reason why you're not getting it is because of the commissioner, or the reason why you're not getting it is because of the secretary. No, they're going to pretty much take the hits, but they're also going to be making an effort to tell the commissioner or the secretary their direct reports that, hey, guys, I still got this concern that needs to be addressed. I can only do so much. They're doing what they can to not push the buck up. Yeah, they're passing your concerns up, but they're not, tattletaling, if you will. Like, hey, guys, I know you want it, but the commissioner up there is not going to allow it. No, they're going to be like, you know what, let me see what I can do. And then again, they're also trying that exhausted effort. So I think today's dialogue is pretty much about documenting. Now, we did discuss this prior, but there's something else I want to mention, because a lot of people will be like, well, Gangi, we really can't do nothing because we don't have a union. And yes, guys, unions can be a very powerful voice. Connie can touch on that because she was also in a high position with unions. But I want to mention something, and this is not to negate the power of a union. But if you think about it, guys, unions are a powerful voice because they speak for the many. That's what it is. They speak for the many. So the greatest concern you have in leadership is when you have many people speaking up about a concern. At that point, you may have to address that concern because, again, there are a lot of people connected that feel that there is a concern that must be addressed. So, again, not to minimize the power of a union, but I don't think you really necessarily need a union if you can get everybody on the same page. So I want to present this to Connie real quick. So if you have management that chooses to be inactive, now when I say chooses to be inactive, I'm talking about, guys, you have exhausted every level to document a concern and to bring that concern up. So it's not just from the front line, but it's also who you directly report to. Because a big part of it, especially if the concerns are coming from the front line, is, are your concerns being relayed up the chain to that management position? Because God forbid you have someone that's like, okay, you know what? I'll listen to what you have to say, but they're not moving anything up. And now we're blaming admin, but technically, yeah, we could say maybe admin should automatically be in the know, but it won't be as detailed as what you know or what that frontline supervisor knows. So one thing right off the bat is I definitely want to make sure that the people you're reporting it to, if you're not directly reporting it to admin, are doing their due diligence and are sending it up and being on top of it. But I want to mention one thing, and I've got to get Connie's thoughts on this. So when management is addressed with a concern from one person, okay, maybe good management will look into it. I would hope so. But when you have management that's just not stepping up, that's not taking responsibility of their position, which is basically for the people they supervise, one person may not be enough. So then what we tend to do is we may go a step up and say, you know what? Let's bring the whole shift together. It's a concern for the whole shift or concern for the specific department. So let's go ahead and write something collective and then forward that up. Now, usually that gets some attention, but there's another level we can do, guys. The other level is, especially when we're talking about understaffing, these concerns don't just affect your department. They affect the other departments that need to feel safe in order for them to do their job. So, for example, we have an understaffed facility, let's say, and all of a sudden I'm writing about my concerns because I'm alone on the floor and I can't technically do my job. But guess what? Medical now has to do their job unescorted, right? So medical also has a concern. So now when we start writing these concerns, why are we writing them in isolated fashion, which maybe my department writes their concern and medical writes their concern, but most likely it's probably just I'm only writing my concern because no one's talking to medical to see how they can add to our higher level need. And another area, guys, and by the way, this is important, is even with the constant watches. So again, spread thin, understaffed, I can't keep my eyes on this inmate and let's say run intake at the same time. Well, maybe mental health has a concern with that because I put this person on a constant watch and I need to make sure that that watch is effective. So now here you are as a supervisor, as you hopefully the concerns are in a position for you to investigate. You go beyond your departmental needs. You go to the other departments and say, hey, listen, we were understaffed the other day and I had an officer doing constant watch and intake, and I know your mental health. What's your thoughts on that? You think there's something that you can write a report on and we could put it together so when we forward something up, it's not just from one person, it's not just departmental, it's operational. So Connie, there's a lot here to cover, but I was wondering what your thoughts on that initial approach. I'm doing it by myself to let's do it as a department to let's do it as a facility. And I know you're muted.
All right. So it's been my experience that usually in order for you to affect major change, you have to be able to present a global picture. You cannot advocate in a bubble, right? And so when we are approaching these type of issues, you really do have to look at, so what is the adverse impact to the institution, right? Like, because I think people initially want to start small, like this is how it's impacting me. And so when you're building that case, right, because that's how you have to look at it, as I am presenting a case to my administration, and I want to be able to show that I've done my due diligence. I am not going to just nitpick at the low-hanging fruit, which is what's happening to me personally, but what is the ripple effect? Which a lot of times we don't necessarily feel we have to be so explicit in mapping that out. But you cannot take for granted that whoever's going to get that report is going to know all the intricacies of what's going on in your facility, right? So you do have to take the systemic approach. Okay, great. So when we've got staffing issues, what is the ripple effect of those staffing issues, right? So we know it impacts the department, it impacts all those who are dependent, so the population is not getting served, and it continues to grow, right? But the moment we can escalate this issue to the system issue, so now because we don't have adequate staffing, our facilities are vulnerable. The public is vulnerable. We don't have key people in key spaces to do the work we need to get done because of it. And now the ripple effect is whoever's reading that document that you're sending up is saying, wow, so when this happens, medical is affected, mental health is affected, school is affected, and then what else, right? So like, I mean, I'm thinking immediately makes me think about when we have like, you know, any sort of operational thing happening, right? Where all of a sudden, most of custody is at this event, whatever the event is, right? And then it's like, oh, well, we weren't able to do sick call today, right? And so what happens when you don't do sick call in one day? You've got now 60 people who was on sick call are now tomorrow 120 people on sick call. And so how do we manage that 120 people? And then let's just throw in there that we missed something, right? Someone should have had their TB test read, or someone should have had, you know, their COVID test, right? Now it's like, holy crap. The bigger picture is, so this operational thing that was something small at first has now turned into we could have now had X amount of people now impacted by tuberculosis or now impacted by COVID, whatever that is. And sometimes I think we get frustrated with the requirement of having to build the story. But like, it is a requirement because we want action. And I think we also have to put ourselves in a position to understand that sometimes the outcome we're looking for may not happen, right? Because perhaps the order came from above and above and above. And as it comes down to us, we're just kind of executing the order, right? Like we're making it happen because we don't really have much say. And that doesn't mean that along the way, there weren't people already advocating for the front line, already bringing forward the issues. It could just be, this is the expectation and it just got to get done.
You know, Connie, you hit up a lot of good points because I basically love the fact that you're talking about how the front line or whoever has that concern is responsible initially for going beyond just venting about it. You know, someone is going to have to take that initiative and document and put their name behind it. Now, obviously, if there is a concern, people are concerned about retaliation, federal law will protect you from that. I mean, is it a hassle? I mean, it could be, but those cases, trust and believe, 9 times out of 10, anybody that does that I guess you call it whistleblowing, it's taken very seriously if all of a sudden after they note their concerns, they find themselves removed. Trust me, as long as you're able to relate that, say, hey guys, I wrote this concern up on this date, and then 2 days later, I'm removed. Trust and believe, guys, but it does take someone to make that initiative. But as I said, the support comes in the numbers. So even if you feel that, you know what, I'm not just enough, I need to, get more people involved in this, then you can make the effort, especially if you're a supervisor and the concern is brought to you. And as a supervisor, maybe it's something that you want to look into and investigate and then forward a good written report, with that documentation to your next level up. I mean, the key is it's really all about who you give that concern to and what they're going to do with the concern. So again, if you're just going to give me the concern as a supervisor, I'm just going to say, okay, I'll just forward it up. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe me as a supervisor, the moment I get your concern, I get your statement, I also make sure, well, if you can't do this, then I'm assuming that when medical comes, they're not able to do this, or when the program providers come, they're not able to do this. So let me go ahead and really start looking at that ripple effect. I mean, that to me is where the energy comes in when it comes to writing up what those concerns are. And then kind of when it gets to that higher level, the higher level is going to look at that and say, wow, like this isn't just one department. This is operations now that we're talking about. We're talking about operations at a highest level. And we cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore that, especially because it's coming from so many different angles. It's very hard to want to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to disregard that. Well, what are you disregarding? You're disregarding safety and security, medical, and the operational side of the facility. So again, it's great when you're able to present a very well thought out report. And then for the supervisor that's you're handing it to, because obviously they're dealing with the same concerns as well, for them to do their due diligence and really go above and beyond in trying to, create a packet, if you will, based on that concern that can also be forwarded up. And I want people to realize something. For the managers that take this as a us versus them, they're helping you. Because then when you go to present your concern to the people like Connie said that do have control, look what they just did for you. They presented you a huge packet that now will, again, passing the buck over, but say, hey, guys, I have this concern. I had the concern investigated. Now whoever you have to answer to, you could present this to them because obviously this concern is operational. And obviously the biggest concerns that are really the foundation of it all is an understaffed facility. But Connie, I mean, if you had a concern and you're from the administrative level, come your way, and you do see this packet from that supervisor who was initially given that concern. Now, by the way, if you're a manager that's going to go back at that supervisor for doing that, okay, we just discovered who you really are. I mean, trust and believe. We just discovered who you really are because, again, if I have a concern that I want to have looked into, one of the biggest decisions that you have to deal with on a management level is how your decisions affect all departments. So now you're doing that research, you're sending it my way, and I could see that, wow, this affects everyone. So now maybe I can come up with a solution that can involve everyone. But Connie, that packet, that effort from that person who receives that concern, doesn't that help management to present it later on? And for anyone who decides that, that packet was kind of not needed, or just they look at that person for doing it as like, whose team are you on? I mean, wouldn't you think that, like, wow, this packet is actually more helpful than it is anything else?
Yeah. So here's the thing. That packet takes out all the guesswork, right? It like this, whoever now has this package in hand, just to think like the messaging, whoever, all the people who contributed, right? like have put all their perspective in there. The person who's now tasked with presenting it to the next level up now has so much information that they can pull from this packet to make a compelling argument, right? And that compelling argument isn't just, okay, I got a ton of people to write some document, right? This is, I now have data from this point, from that point, from that point, that's presenting a picture to the person who we need to receive the message. Sometimes some reports, people are focusing on like the small stuff. And I get it. The small stuff becomes an issue, right? Over time, it wears you down. And so the small stuff needs to be addressed. But when it's making it to the level of, you know, those much higher levels, you need the big stuff. And so the person who's crafting this argument, this compelling discussion, needs to be able to pull on all of that information that you all have provided so that they can now make that argument. And then if there's any, well, but what about this thing? You still got more stuff in your bag, right? I still got this nifty package that has given me all these perspectives. So as much as we may not necessarily want to carry that load or be, you know, sort of the forerunner of that information, the reality is that when we start pushing that stuff up to the next level and the next level, it is all those details that you guys have provided that helps to make that compelling picture. It makes it much harder for someone to say no when all of the holes they tried to poke in your story have been filled, right?
Right. It's spot on because, listen, I know there'll be some people that expect admin to know everything. They're only going to know what you give to them on that level of detail. Don't get me wrong. They're going to have a general understanding of what needs to be done, right? They are. And in some cases, sad to say, you may have some people in management that just blindly make decisions that are policy violations without them really understanding why it's a policy violation. The funny thing about admin is that we're expected to know policy. I get it. But most of the time, the only reason why we may know policy is because we're dealing with something that makes us have to go back and look at it. Mm-hmm. So it's not that, you know, we know policy. It's true. I'm giving away a secret, but it's true. It's not like we know policy like the back of our hands. You know, in most cases, there's going to be something that brings us back to that policy, and in which now we start to educate ourselves on it. But again, it's usually because there may be a concern or maybe some change that we want to implement that we want to make sure it doesn't violate policy. So having said that, you know, when you have a concern, you know, the more details, the better, because you can't expect admin to know all those details. I do expect them to understand it once it's presented to them. Mm-hmm. I do expect them to understand the concerns once it's presented to them, but I don't expect them to know the specific details. So here's the cool thing about that. The cool thing about that is when you highlight that report, those specific details, and you present it to them, they can no longer say they didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, you get what I'm saying, Connie? I mean, Connie, I know people think that management tends to know everything. Some people do, because there's some people that do know they don't after working with them for a little bit. Then they realize it. But once it's presented to them, obviously, you know, in detailed format, then we could see, okay, now there should be some motivation for you to act only because, and again, this is if you're a manager that doesn't want to move anything forward for whatever reason it is. I'm pushing it, you know, so now I'm going to hold you accountable because there's so many things I can point out to. Plus, I'm making it known that I'm writing to you, Gangi. I didn't write to admin, so we're upstairs pointing the finger at everybody. I wrote specifically to you. So now when I have a problem, I'm not going to say I have a problem with administration. I have a problem with Mr. Such and Such or Mrs. Such and Such. So now, here's another good thing about this, Connie. Sometimes you have good people that are in that administration that are limited because their boss is, you know, they have a lid on their leadership, I like to say, John Maxwell, right? So that kind of stops us from going past that lid. So not that we want it to happen, because ultimately we do have some level of responsibility to the house or to the team as a whole, but it kind of feels good sometimes to know that when you direct the concern is to this individual. Because even though, again, we're still all connected on the admin level, it's great to know that when this person now sees that there's a concern, they can't push the buck, because that also protects us in that lower level, right?
They have to take the ownership because it's addressed to me. It's different when it's just addressed randomly, right, to administration. No one has to actually take it and own it. So like, that's one of the best things you can do. If there is something that you need moved forward, you have to address it to a person. That way that person takes ownership. Their name is on it.
Yeah, I'm actually putting in hold people accountable because it is important, guys. So again, we automatically know that we have these concerns that we're facing, right? Now, there's another avenue I want to also discuss. And it comes with, what we discussed before about does admin have your back? I want people to really get an understanding of how the higher level works and where the concerns must be addressed. Again, you may be addressing it to this one person who is not going to point the finger to how to really address it, because I don't want to be a tattletale, but technically you're wasting energy because this person is, you may see them high up, but like Connie said, everybody has a boss, again, if that boss, I want to use John Maxwell here, has a lid, let's say of a 4, and let's say, a potential leader could be a 10, you can't expect the people beneath them to hit that 10. It's not going to happen. The lid's already set so low that, let's say I'm in that lower position, I can't do nothing. But having said that, I really can't tell you technically why I can't do it. Like, I can't say, well, it's Connie stopping me, because then what I'm doing is I'm also creating a divide. So it's good for you guys to do your research and to know exactly, okay, this is what the concern is, but this is where it has to be addressed. So we're not going to generalize. It's not going to be, well, I sent this over to admin, they're not doing nothing. Well, there may be certain people in admin that can't do anything. So at that point maybe that initiative is not enough. Maybe it's not enough because you yourself are noting the concerns, but you're not sending it to the right people, nor are you making the effort to hold someone accountable. So
the only thing I would add to that would be, so there are times, yes, where like, you just can't you can't sort of be the one to affect the change, right? Like I've taken it as far as I can, but I feel that in that accountability, there's also the requirement that we are transparent, right? And so if something is not within your scope or it is beyond your level, there's no reason why you can't say that. Right? Because you don't want to leave the impression that the staff has done all this work. They've put this package together. They've given you, and they're expecting you to move it along, right? You have now become the champion of this thing. It can't just be that you never go back and say, hey, God, and provide a status, right? Because sometimes just providing a status allows the staff to know that you haven't dropped the ball, right? It's enough to say, hey, listen, I got everything. I've pushed it up the chain as far as I can go. This is not you saying, oh, I can't do anymore because Gangi is in the way or Gangi has it. Like, it's not saying you have to do that. What I'm saying is once you have everything, you need to let the staff know you fulfilled your promise to them, because that's what builds the trust. That's why when something else comes up again, they won't hesitate to come together and support moving that issue up the chain. But I feel that a lot of times staff end up having hard feelings because there's this feeling that, oh, they just didn't listen to us or they just didn't take it up a notch. Whatever their expectation is, you have to sometimes be able to say, hey, listen, you guys gave this to me. I took it to here and now it's in their hands, right? That way it kind of closes the loop on the effort so that people don't feel disheartened or they're not feeling discouraged to actually come forward again should something come up again.
I love what you're saying because it brings us back to effort versus outcome. That's why I believe in higher level manager. I'm talking about that's above admin. You got to give up some wins once in a while. Because as much as we want to focus on people and telling them, hey, it's the effort, that's only going to buy us so much time. Yeah. They're going to need something that goes their way, especially if it makes sense. And then the sad thing is that those higher ups may expect that middle management person to, stall them just a little bit longer. I can't, guys. You haven't given me a win ever. So the problem is now I'm starting to lose my reputation with them because, again, the effort, I'm trying, but you're not giving me anything. So now they start to, are you really trying?
Right.
Gangi, I know you say you are, but, especially when they feel that the issue is so simplistic, that's something that's so simplistic that could easily be fixed, but maybe it's not in our control to do it. It's at a higher level. And then the higher management decides, you know what? Nope, don't even listen to us. But then you expect us to balance the message. It's very hard. Like you and middle management, you can't, it's the nose. If you're above someone in middle manager and you're overseeing that messenger, because I'm calling them a messenger, and you're constantly giving them no's, you got to realize something. That person in that middle position is going to try to soften the no as best they can, because that's what they do. That's what they do, because they still want to make an effort to keep the peace. They do. That they're translating, just like they're going to, take that aggressive message from the front line and they're going to soften it up a little bit, never changing the integrity, but not making it as aggressive, and they're going to try to get their thoughts out there. But having said that, the funny thing is that when neither side, gives a win up or understands a reason for a no, middle management starts to become disenfranchised. And one of the concerns that we have is when people don't start getting the outcome they want, they stop doing their job, if you will. They stop doing their job, and then they still expect things to change. It's like, no, guys, when you don't get the outcome, but you feel it's something worth fighting for, you don't give up. You keep on writing it. I mean, what happens with inmates and when their charges get dropped? Well, I'm just going to stop writing up the inmates. No, because eventually I'm going to tell you something. These documents matter. Eventually, one day, the person that's going to be saying no is going to be like, well, wait a second. Here comes 100 documents of each individual incident that you've been saying no to. Where as opposed to a person can say, well, wait a second, guys. This incident hasn't been relevant for like a year. No, it's still happening. But people have stopped documenting it because they don't believe in your effort. Well, that's not, guys. You have to continue to hold that person responsible. And just going back to that relationship between higher level and front line, guys, you got to realize something. Sometimes middle management is in that squeeze. They're in that squeeze, and we don't want to disenfranchise good management that's making the effort but just not getting the outcome. And that comes from both sides. Higher level, are you giving them a chance to win? And lower level, do you understand why it's a no? So this person that's coming to try to keep that bridge, keeps feeling that they have value, because the last thing you want is a middle manager who doesn't feel value and stops the communication between both parties. And what I mean by communication, I mean by the understanding that's meant to be, to have an agency be effective, which means that, sure, a no is a no. So most likely when that manager becomes disenfranchised, they wind up only communicating the message one way, which is going to be top down because that's the hierarchy. And they don't bring about an effort to understand. They don't work with the front lines. I'm sorry, no's a no. Because again, they don't want to hear the concerns because they know they can't do nothing about it. So now you wind up having this facility that just runs on yes and no's, without having an understanding of why the no exists. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. Without that middle person providing an understanding from both perspectives, the morale drops. Now you just have positional leadership where I'm in that position, respect what I'm telling you to do. And therefore, now you don't have the people. John Maxwell said, I'm not going to give them my permission to lead me because, again, I have no idea where we're going and I don't trust them. And again, that starts from the top down. I know there's a lot there, Connie, but what's your thoughts on that?
Listen, I think at the end of the day, we can't ignore the fact that we work with people, right? And, there's a way that we have to engage, not just as professionals, but just as adults, right? And so as professionals, yes, we want to continue to do our jobs, meet our professional obligations. But as adults, like if I've come to you and brought something forward, there's a way that I'm expecting to have some communication, right? And I think that, you know, there's built-in frustrations that I think come along just because when you've been fighting that good fight, it makes it hard to continue fighting when you don't see the results, right? I'm fighting. So when you say, you know, admin has to give some of those wins, you know, the wins allow for the staff to know that their voices are valued and that they're being heard, right? Especially those low-hanging fruit where we can provide something. You know, yes, there may be some systemic issues that may take a lot more effort to sort of start to move the ship or steer the ship in the new direction. But when we have those low-hanging fruits, it is important that those small wins actually come back to the staff. That way they know that they matter. It's not, I'm sitting in this unit every day, I'm dealing with this mess and nobody cares. That is the last thing we want people to start feeling, is that they're having these experiences and no one cares. I brought this forward and look what happened. Nothing. I brought this forward. Why do I keep writing? No one's listening to me. No one wants to be in a work environment where they feel that their voice doesn't matter, that no one's listening, much less anyone's taking action. Because when people don't hear something back, the assumption is no one took action. And so when you talk about that leadership role and that trust, if I've taken the time, clearly this is something impacting me. It's something that we've created this now package and we've moved it up. It is impacting us. We've collectively given a voice and you guys have not responded, right? That sends a very clear message to the staff. And then you talk about staff morale and you talk about absenteeism and you talk about everything else that we see, right? They don't care about me. Why should I care about them? Right? They don't care what happens to us. So why should we care about how we treat the inmates? Why should we care about what's happening in the facility? Who cares about them bringing that in? And I'm not trying to in any way, shape, or form say safety and security is ever like, oh, we don't care about that. That's not what I mean. The going the extra mile, people will stop doing that because there isn't evidence that their administration cares.
Yeah, you know, and it is really about the perspective of the highest level of management. When they see that middle manager and they tell that middle manager, get this done because you work for us, middle manager's like, no, really, I work for them. You know, I think it's a perspective that people may not realize. Like if you're at the highest level, and I actually really don't, it doesn't really matter the level actually when you come to think about it, but let's just, for sake of the argument here, the highest level, you should be looking at that middle manager as not just solely working for you. They're the translator for you, yes, but they also represent the people then. And if you are going to gain the trust of the people, you have to have some empowerment to that middle manager to be able to negotiate and, you know, get some wins. And if there's some losses, to be able to explain it. Like you can't expect anymore, especially in this world, I say it, it gets done. You know, that maybe during emergency situations we get it. But in the meantime, guys, when frontline doesn't seem to understand it, especially they're used to certain things a certain way, you know, that mentality does not work in corrections anymore. And if you want to have good morale, they have to trust in that management. And if you at the highest level and you're trying to run things on that old school mentality, you're killing your facility because they're not going to be able to trust that person that's at that highest level in that facility. And now you start having that generalized animosity. I hate admin. And the problem is you may have admin that just wants to make a difference, wants to make an impact. And they're going to be like, you know what, man, I'm trying. No one's appreciating the effort. You know, so at this point here, you know, I'm just going to give up. So again, when we have those arguments, one thing is, are we doing enough to, you know, prove that admin doesn't have our back? And I'm sure in some cases we mentioned, we do have those people that aren't. But are we also holding the person responsible? You know, because the generalization, and I'm going to tell another story real quick that that matters to me. When I was out in Oklahoma, it was an event that was an honor event to honor the officers who have gone above and beyond, and even civilian staff, yes, them too, that have gone above and beyond in their service of duty. And when I saw that the people that brought these officers, or I recommend these officers for these honors, were management, it's like, guys, there are management that's supporting us. But then at that meeting, when we had this conference, when you heard people just with that generalized animosity towards management, I saw the management that was doing good become discouraged. You know, they became discouraged because, like, man, I'm trying. And I've dealt with a lot of people in my life that you could tell they're starting to become disenfranchised because that's what they say every time we want to push for something positive. And they're just not getting it. Like, but I'm trying. You know, at that point, what are they saying? They're saying, I'm making the effort. I just can't get the damn outcome. So again, you know, we have to make sure that we at the front line realize who's in charge of that outcome and still appreciate the effort. But again, at that highest level, we have to make sure that we provide some wins. So front lines can start building that respect towards that middle manager who's ultimately the one that's the buffer, you know, that's meant to keep that employee morale at the highest level. But I think this was a great dialogue. Guys, Connie had to step out real quick, so don't forget, guys, Connie, she's got the Civilian Correction Academy and her book on the market, Cages Her Cocoon. So if you get a chance, please check it out. And hopefully you guys get a lot from this dialogue. It's just an effort to get, you know, the ball rolling. But I think there was some suggestions here, including that bringing people together, having that concern voiced at that united level creates a lot of power. Trust and believe. That's a lot harder for anybody to turn that away. But as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.